not visible on my side, but in any event,
you have got the document before you.
Yes. Trying to verify that is the same document on my side, but I'll work on the assumption that the court, yes, now it's visible.
Okay.
Yes. With reference to this document, to you or what I want.
But you keep on breaking. I don't know, Mr. Pichela, you keep on breaking.
Yes, my connection is not ideal, my lady.
I can't hear anything.
And I'll try to speak louder.
No, it's a
what
connection.
Is the problem with the connection?
Malik, I was saying my connection is not ideal. I will try to speak louder. Perhaps
now you're better off.
The problem.
You are better off now.
Yes, I'm speaking at maximum volume of my voice.
Okay.
Yes, doctor. What I was saying is this information was not available to you when you formulated your opinion, as it appears. Pardon, my lady?
Okay, continue.
Yes, doctor. I'm saying this information was not available to you when you formulated your opinion. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Ladyship.
I'm going to refer you this on page 4177.
Thank you. Thank you.
May I request that the witness be assisted with?
No, it's already there. I can see
this document.
It is showing on the screen.
Yes, and with reference to this document, doctor, I need you to assist me. It's dated the 1207, and there are columns there, and there seems to be circles around different subject of that column. There is one, I think it's column 4 under special risks, where
column 4, if you can just assist us there.
Yes, the first one. With regard to the first column, I think it starts with skin, weight, skin type, sex, age, special risks. So I'm on special risks, my lady.
Okay.
Yes, I see that there is a anemia that has been circled that. What is the significance of that, doctor?
Your Ladyship, my comment on anemia will be from the general medical and pathology perspective. So anemia means the patient's hemoglobin is low. That could be due to different reasons, and the significance will be attached to the different reasons.
Yes, Ms. Kasim.
Lady, I'm sorry to intervene, but the court didn't see my hand. This question is what my learned friend put to the witness is that anemia is circled. But my lady, on my observation of this document, it is not circled. The number.
Okay, but I see it is circled also myself.
My lady, are you looking at the 3 with a circle around it?
Yes.
That relates to the age. So if anemia were to be circled, it would be.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Okay, I see now.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Well.
Thank you very much.
My apologies for that.
Yes, this could be misleading. Thank you very much.
Yes. No, thank you to the learned senior counsel. That would conclude my questions in respect of Mr. Kenneth Sitole or Kenneth Soka. We'll now move on to I just have the instructions that I received, my lady, with reference to Miss Charity Ratoto. I know I started with her, but there are two documents which I wanted to bring to the attention of the doctor and to understand if that perhaps would have affected the opinion that he has expressed. Just in closing, doctor, with regard to Mr. Soga, the information.
You're confusing us. You have just spoken about Razzo.
I posed the question earlier.
So you're not done with Soga Sitole?
It just occurred to me that the question I posed in these documents to the witness, I did not basically reach the point I was trying to reach, because the point was this information was not available to the doctor at the time he made his opinion. And now I wanted to know from the doctor whether the availability of this information now would in any way have changed his final opinion on the subject matter.
This is the information on page 4137, the previous page.
Yes. The entries,
the entry on the 8th of July 2016.
Yes, and on the 6th.
And on the 6th.
Yes.
So it will mean the 2 pages, which is the other one. The other one was on page.
I think it's 413.
No, the 4137. It's of the 8th of July. Now there was a previous one of the 6th.
It's 4158, my lady. 4158.
4158.
Yes.
I don't know whether you can assist with the two documents, Ms. Hassim. I don't know whether the doctor still remembers what was written. Pages 4158 and 4137.
We'll pull them up, my lady.
I can see the document, Your Ladyship. I'm not sure if I'm being asked to respond.
Yes,
I'm going to put the question for you, doctor, because I was just explaining to Your Ladyship where I was going with that. Now,
all right.
Doctor, from the information that is now available to you is the fact that the decedent, having been admitted, he was transferred to Mamelodi Hospital, where he subsequently on the 16th of August.
Really. Mr. Pichela, I don't know. We're having problems. I can't hear you. You keep on breaking and breaking.
Apologies, my lady.
You might have
indicated that
to
my
look
connection is not ideal.
You might have to leave the meeting and rejoin and also change your position there. Otherwise, we're going to have a problem.
I will do so, my lady. May I exit now?
Yes, you please do that.
Yes.
Yes, continue.
What I'm putting to you now, on transfer of Mr. Soka to Anchor. 7 days later, less than 7 days later, he was already being attended to by a Dr. Wadwala, who I believe is an accredited and professional medical person. And
just bear with me. I think my battery, I have to. Thank you. Yes, what is the question?
Yes, I'm saying, in light of all these facts that are now available to you, would that impress you to have formulated your opinion in a different way?
Yeah, I've got, I don't know. Can you hear Mr. Pichela?
Care and management.
Your Ladyship, what I understand from what I've been asked is that
but
with
before you respond, we didn't get the question. It's fine. I can hear. Maybe you understand it, but I haven't heard the question because he kept on breaking. And I think his questions must be clear. We must be, so that it can be properly captured on record. Mr. Pichela?
Yes, my lady.
I don't know. Am I the only one struggling to hear Mr. Pichela?
No, my lady, Mr. Pichela is breaking all the way.
Yes, he is breaking all the way.
Escort, please, my lady.
And you say, your position seems to be right, but I don't know.
Doctor? My lady, I've tried to change position to the position I normally adopt.
You'll have to do it again, because now it's worse than before.
Okay,
my lady,
I'm going to try and join, my lady.
Mr. Makani?
Oh, my lady, I was just advising if you could leave and also rejoin.
That's what he did. Okay.
Okay, let me try that again, my lady.
Yes, please.
God, please.
My lady?
Mr. Late?
It seems to me, when listening to Mr. Pichela, that this, the hardware on his computer, the microphone, might be defective. If he can maybe arrange for another laptop or something, because it seems like a loose connection on the microphone.
He's not hearing you. Perhaps let's wait for him to join. Yes, Mr. Late?
Mr. Pichela?
Yes, advocate.
If you if you can perhaps obtain others hardware, it seems as if there's a loose connection to your microphone of your computer. I don't know whether you can maybe swap with somebody else or whatever, but it seems like the microphone doesn't work very well. I don't know. It just sounds
But
like.
let him try. Let's see if he can succeed. Let him try again. Continue, Mr. Michelle.
Thank you, Malady.
You might have to take that option if you can't get along. Continue.
Yes, doctor. What I was saying, what I was putting to you, and
that's much better.
That is to say that I was troubleshooting what was the problem, my lady. Seems like maybe it's resolved.
Continue.
Yes. What I was putting to you, doctor, was in light of this new information that you did not have previously, would that have affected your opinion with regard to the treatment and management of this patient at Anchor?
The information presented to me, your ladyship, will not change my opinion as drafted in my opinion report.
Okay.
Scott, please. Now I'm going to move on. Before I do, there is my instructions that I bring the following two documents to account with regard to Mr. Charity Razoto. And the document starts on page 6289. And it concludes 6289, my lady.
Yes.
And it concludes on page 6294.
Yes.
Now, this is an affidavit by one Nunu Joan Maditse, who is the sister, the younger sister to Mr. Charity Razoto.
Yes.
The relevant portion of the document that I wanted to bring to the attention of the doctor is with regard to paragraph 6.7 thereof.
Just a second, I'm trying to look at how long is the document. Okay. Paragraph?
6.7, my lady.
Yes.
And what this paragraph seems to suggest is that the family of Mr. Razoto were not even aware that he had been moved to an NGO. So, in a sense, that also presupposes that permission was not sought from them prior to moving him to the relevant NGO. Now, were you aware of this document, doctor, when you formulated your opinion?
What is this document? Oh, okay, it's an affidavit. Okay.
Yes.
I was not aware of this document, your ladyship.
Now, I suppose the next question to ask you would be whether it would have affected your opinion as you have formulated it. Now being made aware of the facts surrounding the transfer of Mr. Razoto to the NGO.
Yes.
The new document
yes, that's the question.
Will not affect the construction of my opinion on this case, your ladyship.
Scott, please.
Yes.
The The second document will be on page 6284.
Page?
6284.
Yes.
And this is a statement by my client, Mrs. Dorothy Franks. If you recall, I pointed you to the date of the 23rd of June, 2016. And in paragraph 1, she indicates on line 4 that the nurses from the hospital, and this is with reference to the patients that were received on that date, just left them in the hallway, and they left without telling us the names of all the patients. The ward was very full and space was limited for patients, as we can only accommodate 25 patients. Now, you may read further for your benefit, but the point that I wanted to put to you is this one. And I wanted to find out from you whether this in any way affects the opinion as you expressed with regard to the situation, the handing over of the patients from CCRC to Anchor.
Your Ladyship, my construction of my opinion tried to capture the essence which sounded like the picture that's been presented to me. So my construction of the opinion will still be the same, will not be affected by this new information.
Okay, thank you.
Passport, please. My lady, I will now move on to Mr. Charles, Daniel Charles Josiah.
Okay.
Now, with reference to Mr.
Which is the surname here? The surname is Josiah.
Because I don't know if it's Daniels or Josiah. Somewhere it's recorded as Josiah Daniels, and then there is Daniels Charles Josiah. So I don't know if it refers to the same person.
Okay.
My lady, for the assistance of the doctor, it's DR number 1407 of 2016.
Yeah.
What page is that?
Thank you, Your Ladyship.
Can I have the page?
Page for the
3317, my lady.
is
Come again?
3317.
Double 3317.
Okay, thank you.
Now, what I wanted to find out, Doctor, here, it's only one aspect. I see that, and with many of the postmortems that you have conducted, on this one in particular, you conducted the postmortem on the 21st of September 2016, commencing at 7:30, I believe, in the morning. But then the date when it was signed and commissioned is the 25th of January 2017. I just wanted to find out why such a long lapse of time before you placed your signature on your findings.
Each autopsy and autopsy report is unique. There are many factors that come into concluding a postmortem report. So the timeline for each report will always be different. And to compound the matter, these cases were non-standard. They were not our typical cases we do due to long periods of delay between death and autopsies being requested. In this particular case, additional tests were requested of toxicology on the patient. Toxicology is done by a different lab than our mortuary. We depend on them to tell us the results. So before concluding autopsy, each doctor wants at least all the information back before they conclude the autopsy. So the time delay between autopsy and signing out the autopsy report will be affected by many factors, which include ancillary or special investigation on each case.
Thank you, Doctor. That explains it. I'll now move on to the decedent, Mr. Timothy Ngumalo. Here again, there's just one aspect that I wanted to converse with you, and I've noted that in page 4249 of your post-mortem report,
My lady, if I must, my assist, it's DR 1915 of 2016.
Thank you, Your Ladyship.
The page number is Mr.
4248, my lady. Start on 4248.
Thank you.
And it concludes on 4253.
I'm on the document, Your Ladyship.
Thank you.
Okay. The one aspect that I wanted to explore with you, on page 4249, paragraph 4.5, you have indicated that under signs of disease, you indicated sunken orbits.
Paragraph 4.2.
4.5, my lady. Page 4249.
Yes, paragraph 4.5.
Yes. Bullet number 2. You indicate sunken orbits.
Yes.
I just wanted to understand whether that is the same as sunken eyes.
Your Ladyship, it is not the same thing. The orbit describes where the eye is housed. So the eye is inside the orbit. By making this description sunken orbit, I meant the tissue which is composed of a loose soft tissue in the form of eyelids appeared sunken at autopsy. So I'm not describing the globe, the eye itself. So it's not the same as sunken eyes. The eye is inside an orbit. I was describing where the eye is housed, the orbit where the eye is housed.
And I presume that you indicate this as some form of disease.
It's a non-specific sign which might mean a lot of things, including a poor hydration status of the patient, chronic malnutrition, chronic disease of any kind. So it's not a specific symptom to one disease. It just means it might add to the feature of a general status of the patient.
Now, you have indicated 3 factors there. Poor malnutrition, dehydration, and unspecified illness as indicative of this condition, correct?
Those 3, I gave 3 examples. There are 100 more examples that can result in it.
Now, is it a similar thing to sunken eyes? Where you're observing it?
Sorry? Your Ladyship.
It's a similar thing to sunken eyes with regard to the cause of eyes to sink. That condition you refer to as sunken eyes.
I've never heard of a condition called sunken eyes.
Maybe the question, if I understand your question, Mr. Fihlela, what he wants to know is whether the conditions that you are referring to that could be could come or evidence themselves as a result of the sunken orbit. Could they be the same conditions that could also be there when a person has a sunken eye? Was that your question, Mr. Pitlela?
Yes, your leadership has captured the essence of my question correctly.
Your leadership,
yes, doctor.
For me to comment, I'll need to know what sunken eye condition is, because I put it to this court that I don't know a condition called sunken eye.
No, he is not referring to a sunken eye as a condition.
Okay.
He's saying where a patient has been diagnosed with that sunken eye, could the same conditions that you have just highlighted as examples of conditions that could be in a patient who shows signs of sunken orbit?
The condition I've described could be found in a patient. The sign of sunken orbit can be found in the condition I've described.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the signs of sunken eye.
I've never heard of a condition called sunken eye. Hence, I cannot comment if any of these condition I've described can be seen in a condition called sunken eye.
Maybe we don't, Mr. Martin. Let's hear Mr. Martin.
As it pleases your ladyship, my lady, I think maybe if the witness could just go off for a minute. I don't want to interfere with what Mr.
Can you just step
asking.
aside just a second? Thank you.
My lady, the last time sunken eyes came up with the previous medical witness,
it was not this
I understood him to, yes, I understood him to be saying that he observed that the patient had sunken eyes. Not that it was a condition, but it was just an observation, and it related to the question of dehydration. I don't want to get ahead of what Mr. Pichela is doing.
Yes, no,
I think just for context, that's what it was.
Thank you very much. Can we call the witness back, Mr. Pichela?
Yes, my lady, please. Scott, please.
Evidence leaders, can you assist us? I don't know whether he hears.
Lady, I'm trying to find the doctor.
Okay, thank you. I just thought because we started very late, it was not right for us to take the lunch, and we can just proceed until Mr. Pichela finishes with his cross-examination, or even the others who have not yet cross-examined the witness. I hope that is in order because I didn't tell you about it.
My apologies. I just quickly went out for a second, Your Ladyship.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Pichela?
Thank you, my lady.
Do you want to deal with this or I don't know?
Yes, I just wanted clarity on this aspect. Doctor, where you observe a patient with deep sunken eyes, not as a medical condition,
okay,
but as an observation, as a physical observation that this patient's eyes have sunk in. What would be your conclusion?
I'm cut off. Sorry, I was cut off for a second. I couldn't hear Your Ladyship.
Yes, doctor. What I'm saying is you're receiving a patient with what appears to be sunken eyes. not as a medical condition, but as an observation. You follow?
I follow. Yes, Your
You
Leadership.
follow, Doctor?
I follow Your
Yes,
Leadership.
I'm saying what would be your immediate conclusion in that regard?
I will think of a patient's general hydration status.
Yes. Is that the only thing that you'll see?
Only thing I will see in a patient with poor hydration status.
No, I'm saying with regard, is it the only way that sunken eyes would manifest itself?
Sunken eyes is an observation. So if I observe an eye, a globe, or an eye being sunken, that's the only thing I'll observe, that the eye is sunken. If I understand Your Ladyship.
All right.
Yes, and then the question for me is, what would that say to you?
Your Ladyship, in my previous answer, I stated that it will tell me about the general hydration status of a patient.
Now, is age a factor in that equation? The age of the person, is it a factor in that equation?
Hydration and age, when I've read, it does has correlation. The older the patients are, the intake of their fluids seems to mismatch what they require. So in general, older patients seems to be not hydrated as well as they should be. So age does play a role in your hydration status, Your Ladyship.
Okay.
And the fact that a person also is bedridden and appears to be very sick, in the sense that this person might have other underlying conditions, how would you then convince yourself conclusively? Let's stick to the issue of hydration. How would you convince yourself as a pathologist that indeed what I'm observing eliminates all possible causes?
Just before you respond, there is an objection here. Ms. Mary?
Thank you, Malay. I do not see the relevance for this line of questioning, as the cause of death is burns complicated by cellulitis and acute bronchopneumonia. So I don't see the relevance of this line of questioning pertaining to this patient or the deceased.
Mr. Pihlelo?
My lady, the witness is an expert. He's a pathologist. I don't know if we're going to ask him to step aside, because then it defeats the whole purpose of me continuing with the questioning that I was continuing on. And I was almost done with the question in any event.
But now he has not yet answered the question. Do you want him to answer? Because now we have to deal with this. You want him to step aside again? Or?
Yes, I would prefer so, my lady, because then it defeats the whole purpose.
Okay.
My lady,
can you just step aside? Yes, you may continue.
My lady, what I understand, the whole purpose of this exercise that we're engaged in is to paint a holistic picture. Now, I've indicated to the previous, is to paint a holistic picture of what happened with regard to each and every person. Now, I've not indicated that I'm sticking only to this one person. In fact, I've indicated with regard to this witness that with regard to Mr. Timothy Numa, that I have only one aspect that I wanted to explore, and that is the sunken orbits. And this arises from the previous testimony that was given by another expert regarding the condition that manifests itself, or the observation of sunken eyes. Because when I queried that superficial observation, it was put to me that that is done. It's an industry standard. It's the standard operating procedure in the field, so to speak. So now I'm putting that to the test because I've taken issue with what that witness has said with regard to this condition. Now, yes.
Does it relate to the cause of death? That is what that is the reason why. I take it the way I understand. Just a second. The way I understand Ms. Marriott's objection. Does that go to the issue of the cause of death?
Yes, but
the issue of the sunken orbit.
Yes, my lady. My understanding was with the previous testimony that has been received by the court, the two conditions that prevailed were being emaciated and having sunken eyes, although no direct cause of death could be determined. Now, in this instance also, we see emaciation, and then there is also issue of sunken orbits. The first thing I wanted to establish was, and now I'm moving on to, pardon, my lady?
Continue. I'm struggling to hear some of the things. I've noted you, Mr. van Bergen. Let him finish his point, and then I'll come to you.
Yes, the point being, testimony has been received. Now, this witness is in a similar field, is similarly placed as an expert. What I wanted to understand was whether there is a correlation between this sunken eye condition and also this sunken orbits. That was eliminated. Now, moving along, what I understood Dr. Anoyo to have testified to was to the fact that by mere observation of a patient superficially and seeing sunken eyes, you are able to draw a conclusion that this person is dehydrated.
That
the person is dehydrated.
Mm-hmm.
The deceased is dehydrated.
Mm.
Now, the question, what I put to Dr. Anoyo was to the fact that that is not the only cause of sunken eyes.
Mm.
And now it is an opportune time because we have another expert who can perhaps lay the issue to rest for us without the need for us to call another expert to come and gainsay what Dr. Anoyo has said.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
So the question I was putting, I don't know if the doctor will answer in support of Dr. Anoyo or not, and that is a risk that I'm willing to take, my lady.
Mr. van Bergen?
Thank you, my lady. My lady, Dr. Anoyo's evidence, as I had it, he referred to the cause of death, and I unfortunately can't remember which deceased it was, but it was with regard to Exhibit L1. He described the deceased as being emaciated and dehydrated.
Yes.
And he then explained why, amongst the issues that he took into account in diagnosing dehydration, was the fact that the patient's eyes were sunken.
Yes.
And he described the cause of that to be that it was because of the loss of fat around the eyes, orbital fat.
Mm.
And my lady, to my mind, that appears to be exactly what this witness is saying. So I'm not sure whether the question has not been asked and answered already.
Yeah.
The information that has been elicited from this witness appears to me to support Dr. Anoyo's testimony.
Okay, can I hear another view before Ms. Hassim?
Sorry, my lady, I just want to, my point was I suppose the same as Mr. van Bergen's, which is the question has been put to this witness, what he would conclude if he was observing in a post-mortem a patient with sunken eyes, and this witness said his conclusion would be dehydration.
Correct.
So the question has been asked and the question has been answered. And to go further than that without putting further context to the witness, I don't think is fair to the witness, asking the witness just abstract questions and theoretical questions.
Okay, thank you. I don't know, is there any other hand or you forgot to lower your hand? All right. Mr. Pichela?
My lady, if I may respond. My lady, I acknowledge that when I initially posed the question, the witness answered that dehydration. The follow-up question to that is it the only thing that can be indicative of sunken eyes? Hence, I put the question of age into the equation, and that gives him a better context. I haven't said to the witness that you are wrong for saying that or whatever the case might be. I don't understand why are we afraid to explore this aspect further? Because if the witness has been able to observe that sunken eyes,
I don't think what they are raising is that. In my view, I was thinking that this question has been answered. So I don't know where you're going with this question. Maybe it's a question of just rephrasing it so that one can understand it. Because in my view, I think it has been sufficiently answered. You have pursued the issue of sunken eyes. I don't know.
Thank you, my lady.
Yes.
I'll move on from this question.
Can we call the doctor back? I see
yes.
He's just joining. Yes. Doctor, are you there? Thank you.
Is the doctor back, my lady? I can't
Just
see
a second.
him on the screen.
I think he's leaving now. I thought he was back. Okay, thank you very much. Continue, Mr. Pichela.
Thank you, my lady. Doctor, in closing on this aspect, to your knowledge, having been a medical practitioner and now a pathologist, this condition, is it where you seeing person with sunken eyes and you've concluded on dehydration, as you have indicated, are there any other factors that you will take into consideration in order to come to a conclusive diagnosis that indeed this person is dehydrated?
So, sunken eye, as I understand from what you've explained, I follow, it's a sign. It's a sign, not a condition. So it's just a sign which is non-specific. If you, as a doctor, are thinking of a particular diagnosis, you will run tests to confirm that the diagnosis you have, to exclude the other possible diagnoses. So this as a sign, not a disease, it's just a non-specific sign. If you have sunken eyes, doesn't automatically mean somebody is dehydrated. It's a sign that a doctor will see. It's not like what we call a pathognomic feature. I see this, therefore equals to this. I'm not sure if you follow, or should I break it down more, Your Ladyship?
I would be more interested with regard to the test that you would run in that event.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so if I understand the question, you're asking me specifically how you're going to diagnose dehydration.
Yes.
Yeah. So with dehydration, there are tests at autopsy we can do to diagnose if somebody is dehydrated, like vitreous humor to check the levels of potassium, sodium, to look at other mucosal surfaces, if that's what you're thinking the diagnosis is. So, but in the patient I'm dealing with and the patients I'm dealing with here, I was not thinking dehydration as a condition. It was a sign in a complex of other signs, which led me to a different diagnosis.
What does refrigeration, does it have a factor? Prolonged refrigeration, does it have a factor?
Refrigeration does have a factor on the body in many ways. I'm not sure, leadership, specifically what you want me to expand on.
Would it contribute to dehydration, for instance? Any loss of fluids or whatever the case may be?
Yes, it has been shown that refrigeration can affect the dehydration status of a patient and how the patient might look morphologically at autopsy, your ladyship.
Thank you, Doctor. I'm going to move on now to Mr. Joseph Mfundeni Gumede. I think your report starts on page 3879, Doctor.
Alrighty, it's DR number 1446 of 2016, and the court handed in page 3819 to 3824.
Yes, Doctor. Have you accessed the document?
I have two documents, one starting with 3879 and the other starting with 3877.
I want to start with the one for 3879.
I'm looking at the document, your ladyship.
Yes. On page 3880, I think under paragraph 3J, sorry, 3880.
I'm looking at the specified page, your ladyship.
Yes, I think the paragraph starts on page 3879, paragraph 3. I think you are referring to paragraph 3.
J, my lady.
J.
Yes.
I'm looking at 3J, your ladyship.
Okay.
Yes. Now, with reference to this, it is my instructions that indeed the glucose machine was not working. However, arrangements were in place that whenever there was a need for them to use a glucose machine, they would obtain same from CCRC. Further to that, my instructions are that this is also an indication that this patient should not have gone to the NGO.
Hey, my friend.
Lady, somebody's talking on their mic. I don't know who.
Okay, I just think that maybe don't recur. Continue.
So
I trust that
also
all your mics are muted.
So that is what I'm putting to you, Doctor. That these documents which you have had access to, they in fact confirm that conclusion. You agree with me?
I agree that the information I put on Jay was what was available to me, and what you're saying seems to confirm what was available to me, Your Ladyship.
Yes, and then there is a second point to say with regard to that paragraph. Are you saying, Mr. Pitlela, that it is the contention of your client to say that the patient should not have been sent to that NGO? Did I pick that correctly?
Indeed, my lady. That
Yes.
is basically the contention of my client.
Can we hear you, Doctor? He wants you to comment in relation to this paragraph.
Sorry, my battery is dying. Okay, sorry for a second, my battery was dying. Your Ladyship.
Okay.
Confirmed that the statement on J is confirmed by my learned friend. The question posed to me that the patient should have not been moved to the NGO. I have no comment on that question posed on me. I can direct who can have a crisp answer to this question, because this is more the granular management of a patient. So my clinical friends can help me with the granular management of the patient. I put this note because it bothered me that the patient who was suffering a condition that needed continuous access to such said machine, somehow it sounded difficult that they have access to that machine. Your Ladyship.
Thank you.
Yes, Doctor. The second thing, paragraph 9 on page 3881. That's paragraph 9B. You are drawing a conclusion, or is it an observation, where you're saying it appears that the health workers at the anchor center were aware of the dissident's conditions as evidenced by the type of treatment administered to him. Now, where did you obtain this information, Doctor, that made you draw this conclusion?
Your Ladyship, all the information I had was presented to me in a form of a police docket. I extracted all the information I can from that docket. I don't remember what was inside the docket, but everything was that was possibly given to me, I reviewed in that form of a police docket, which included that information that I extracted my statement from.
And I presume this was, or maybe let me just get it from you. Do you recall the date when that information was made available to you? Was it after you had completed the first autopsy, or was it before you engaged with the autopsy?
I don't remember the exact date of when I received the police docket. I can expand on how the matters happened, usually happen. At the time of autopsy, there are times we receive adequate information, there are times we don't receive adequate information. If we don't receive adequate information, we request for additional information so that we can review the case holistically. With this particular case, I do not remember if the information holistically was given to me prior to the autopsy or after the autopsy, or additional information was requested after the autopsy. I can go back to my records to try and help the court with that matter, Your Ladyship.
Please do, Doctor, because I think the issue of date is going to be quite critical in this inquest.
Maybe you can give me a second, because usually when I construct an opinion, the first section deals about how events went. Okay, as you see in paragraph 2 of the same document, I reference other documents. So I'm going to see what these other documents are, which were directed to Warrant Officer Maseko. So I'm going to look where D5116 is. And then I'm on document 3877, dated 14 December 2016. And then in this document is my request to Warrant Officer Maseko to make available copies of the hospital files, affidavits, and NGOs, and affidavits. So reading this information which I've put on record, it leads me to think that at the time of autopsy conclusion at the mortuary, the autopsy, not the postmortem, the autopsy after cutting down the body, I requested additional information in the form of a hospital file. Therefore, it means they came after the body was dissected, Your Ladyship.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. So, in paragraph 11, you draw 11A, that is on page 3882.
I'm on paragraph 11 of the said document,
You draw
Your Ladyship.
the conclusion that, yeah, it's the same document, page 3882, and it's 11A. This is it appears to me to be a very strange. Yes. Are you there, Doctor?
I'm at the document and looking at the said paragraph, Your Ladyship.
Yeah, paragraph 11A, you say, in my view, the overall clinical management of the dissident appears to have been inadequate. What did you mean by that?
What I meant is what was described in the document prior to this statement. This was a comment drawn from the observations made on the review of the documents that were given to me. And then with that information, it appeared to me that the patient in this particular center could have not received adequate management. Hence, I requested that it appears. I didn't make any conclusion. I said in the information I have, so in my view, with the information I have, it appears to be the case.
Oh, so this statement, you are not making conclusions here. You are merely just venturing a proposition, so to speak.
I'm making a comment, Your Ladyship.
Yes. that would conclude my questioning with reference to Mr. Gumede. But before I do, were you aware that I suppose this was discussed in the arbitration proceedings, so I'm not going to touch on that. I'm going to move on. I think now we can deal with the last person on the list that I have, Mr. Franz Decker. Now,
can you assist us, Miss Marriott?
I'm just looking for my document, my lady. It's DR number 1756 of 16, page number 4738.
I'm at the said document, Your Ladyship.
Yes, Doctor. Now, I'm gonna refer you to document 4799. Document on page 4799. It starts on 4799. It ends on 4805.
I don't have the said document in my disposal. I'll just check.
You say it starts from which pages?
4799, my lady, to 4805. This seems to be a report by Dr. Abel J. Pinar, professor.
I don't have such a document, Your Ladyship.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you assist Ms. Asim?
My lady,
while
the
they are
document is
looking
based on the
Just a second,
Okay.
Mr. Kitlela. Yes?
I can see on the screen, Your Ladyship, the said document.
Okay.
Now, were you involved in the compilation of this document in any capacity?
I was not, Your Ladyship.
When amongst the documents that you received when you compiled your report and opinions, was this document among the documents that you perused?
It was not part of the documents given to me, Your Ladyship.
My lady, on that basis, I will rather than wait for Professor Binar to come and testify about the content of this document, since the witness has not seen it before. But in any event, Doctor, there is another document that starts on page 4806.
I can see the said document 4806, Your Ladyship.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, I note that essentially what has been found was that the deceased died from sepsis. Is that correct? Doctor?
Yes. There's a diagnosis by the attending clinician and a diagnosis by me. So the diagnosis by the attending clinician diagnosed the patient to have died due to sepsis secondary to septic bed sores. My diagnosis is along the similar lines. I just formulated in the way we formulate it. I said it's septic, debuticus ulcers complicated by sepsis, Your Ladyship.
Okay.
So what you are saying now, in terms of your opinion, you have indicated that maybe paragraph 12, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, doctor. I'm trying to put it in a proper context. Paragraph 12 of your document, you're saying you're not a clinician, so you cannot comment on the reliability or adequacy or connected. Sorry, you are not in a position to reliably comment on the adequacy and correctness of the treatment provided to this patient.
Which paragraph 4 of which document now?
My lady, it's paragraph 1-2. It's the conclusion.
On this very same document?
Yeah, document that start on page 4806.
Yes, I just want to know the specific paragraph.
Yes, they contain this condition.
Where is what? I remember seeing that. I just wanted to know, where is it?
It's on page 4808, my lady. Paragraph 12.
Yes, I've noted
continue.
the paragraph.
Yes, I got that. Paragraph 12.
Yes. Now, I wanted to understand the context of this disclaimer that is included in paragraph 12 in the context of Mr. Deger's death. Whether here you're only referring to treatment or whether you are referring to conclusions that might have been reached by a clinician at any stage.
With this statement, the statement is present.
Just a second, doctor. Oh, I thought somebody... Is there a hand? Okay, continue. I thought there was an objection.
Yes, Your Ladyship, the statement is present to alert the reader that I, as a person who drafted this document, am not well versed with the current standards of management of that condition that I'm describing. So meaning the whatever the document has been read at that exact time, what is the latest standards? It does not exclude my findings, my diagnosis of what happened to the patient in the form of my conclusion on diagnosing the patient from my side. The disclaimer is for the current up-to-date management of the said condition, in this case, septic bed sores. So the disclaimer is to notify the reader that the current management standards, I am not up to date with them, only up to date with what is relevant in my field.
And this relates to treatment.
Okay.
Treatment, yes, my lady, your lady.
Okay, doctor. Now I understand what you're saying. So in paragraph on page 4807, paragraph 7, Dr. T.P. Chivase says, death was due to natural causes. Are you disputing that in your findings, doctor? That conclusion that it was natural causes, are you disputing
it? Your Ladyship, I'm reading the complete paragraph. Can I have maybe like 10 seconds?
Yes, that's fine.
Yes, Your Ladyship. After reading the paragraph, I stand with what I wrote in this paragraph. There is a definition of what a natural and unnatural death are in South Africa. So, as stated in my paragraph, it's possible that the doctor did not have the information of what might have happened to the patient prior to her taking care of the patient. So maybe that's why in her conclusions, she decided that the death was due to natural causes because she didn't have the information and the history of the motor vehicle accident. According to our laws, the definition of an unnatural death is stated, and then if a nexus can be made between the motor vehicle accident and the subsequent death of the patient, the death becomes unnatural, which is what I was defining in this paragraph.
Come again? I didn't pick that up. If I can explain.
Point number one, it is possible that the doctor did not have the information of a motor vehicle accident happening to this patient.
Okay.
Point number two, her not having or him not having this information could have led her to decide that this death was natural.
Okay.
Having the information of a motor vehicle accident provided and then forming the nexus between the accident and the subsequent evolution of the patient's case, the two can be connected. Therefore, this makes this death unnatural. Unnatural.
Okay.
But you are aware that the vehicle accident happened in 1999?
I am aware. There is no time limit in our law that says if a condition happened in 2020 and then you die in 2050. I know this is an extreme example. If you can find direct correlation between the two events, that somehow the time melts and erases the connection. The law requires that you must, if you can demonstrate a connection between the two events, time is not a factor, Your Ladyship.
Okay.
So death was inevitable?
I don't follow, Your Ladyship.
I'm saying death was inevitable since 1999.
I still don't follow, Your Ladyship. Death was
inevitable, isn't it? You are linking it, and from the example that you're giving, if there was an accident in 1999, then the person dies in 2016, then there must be a link between what happened in 1999 and what ultimately transpired in 2016. I'm just trying to understand your reasoning correctly.
No, the links don't happen. I'll give you an example. I can be involved in motor vehicle today, fracture my bones, go to hospital, I get treated, and then next day I die of a condition which I have, which is coronary artery disease, and have a heart attack and die. There's no connection between the accident and my known underlying condition of a heart attack. But if I have the same accident, I fracture my bone, and then somehow while I'm in hospital, I develop infection of the bones, and then it stays with me for years and years because they cannot clear the infection, and then eventually I die. There is a link between the two events. So that one will be a positive linkage with the nexus.
So it depends.
So it depends. Not all
the facts, yes.
Facts, yes, Your Ladyship.
Thank you.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to understand, Doctor, there is another doctor who observed and came to a conclusion. Now, in your assessment, you are saying, in a sense, that that doctor did not have all the relevant information to have made that assessment of natural causes. Now, I want to know why you are able to override that doctor's conclusions on this death, on this particular death. Because on the one instance, one has said there's natural causes, but you come and you say, because of an accident that happened in 1999, therefore the death cannot be natural. Maybe I'm missing you on that aspect, because I'm trying to follow how the accident would then ultimately feature into
I've noted you, Ms. Marriott. Finish your
the
points,
conclusions with regard to death. Yeah? The septic decubitus ulcers complicated by sepsis. I'm trying to
Okay,
understand.
just before the doctor answers, Ms. Marriott.
Thank you, my lady. The doctor explained that the doctor that saw the deceased at the hospital might not have the history of or the background of the patient, and Dr. Makoba explained because of the motor vehicle accident, that was the reason for his finding. So this question was already answered.
My lady Van Bay.
I'm listening. Thank you, Ms. Marriott.
My lady, we are talking May. I think May, in the use of the word may in this context, it's decisive, because if the Dr. Makoba is speculating about what Dr. Chevase did or did not have at the time when Dr. Chevase made the conclusions, then we have a problem if we're going to take Dr. Makoba's word over Dr. Chevase. He has to demonstrate that the findings of Dr. Chevase were wrong. As such, I'm overruling her on this basis. It cannot just be that he believes because that information might not have been available. What informs that conclusion? Because all he could do, he could have taken a phone and called Dr. Chevase and established that fact. It's not like he finished the autopsy today and had to submit it the next day. He had time in between to
Can
do
I hear other views?
all that. Yes.
Maybe the doctor should step aside so that I can hear if there is anybody who can make an input here. Is there anybody who can assist here? Mr. Van Bergen, is there any other person before I go back to Ms. Marriott? Yes, Mr. Van Bergen. Is there anybody else after Mr. Van Bergen? Okay, Mr. Van Bergen.
Thank you, my lady. My lady, my understanding of Mr. Pishlela's cross-examination on this issue is that he is exploring the logic between ascribing an accident in 1999 as the cause of death of the patient in 2016. And I must admit, it's perhaps a disconnect between the legal brain on the one hand and the medical brain on the other hand. But it is an issue that, to me, appears also odd if one looks at issues of causation. I submit that this is an issue that should be explored and that Mr. Pishlela should be allowed to ask these questions, because the doctor must explain the basis, the logical basis. He came to the conclusion that he had.
Would we say, as Ms. Marriott has indicated, that the doctor has answered and then leave it there? Or because as I understand Ms. Marriott's argument is that has been answered, to say that the other doctor may have not seen or may have not had the background.
Yes, my lady, that is speculation on the part of this witness. He doesn't have that knowledge.
Correct.
I think the important aspect goes to the core of expert evidence, and that is that it must be logical reasoning, and that's how I understand Mr. Pishler's examination at this stage.
Thank you, Mr. Late. Thank you very much.
As the court pleases, my lady, I understand where Mr. Pishlela is going.
Yes.
It's an aspect that the witness has answered, even though Mr. Pishlela is not satisfied with the answer. I don't think it's going to get any further. That is the way the doctor sees it. It's his impression that the initial doctor did not have the background knowledge. That is why
Could we say that that is speculative because the doctor doesn't know?
He doesn't know, so that is where we're going to keep on also asking the same question. That is the doctor's impression, and that is where he stands.
Okay.
Going back and forth with the same question is not going to take us anywhere.
All right, thank you. Miss Meredith, do you want to say something before I close this?
Thank you, my lady. It's also my respectful submission that this court can come to a finding pertaining to a novus actus interveniens, and I think that's where my colleague is going to. And for the doctor to explain that as to the reasoning behind it, it's my respectful submission he has already asked and or answered that question.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Pichela, you do want to say something before I close the issue?
No, my lady, all I can say is that this...
Am I seeing another hand? Just a second. Can you please lower your hand so that I shouldn't be confused that there's another hand there? Yeah. Mr. Pichel?
All I wanted to establish has been quite eloquently put by
Mr. Van Bergen.
Advocate Van Bergen.
Yes.
Because that is essentially where I'm going with the question. I want to know...
Okay. No, I got that point. Let me give Mr. Pienaar the opportunity, Mr. Pienaar.
May it please the court, my lady.
Yes, Mr. Pienaar.
My lady, I would submit that it's within Mr. Pihlela's rights to cross-examine the witness to determine on what grounds his conclusion is founded. And if it's speculative, surely it's within Mr. Pihlela's right to determine the grounds on which the speculation is founded. Otherwise, it's speculation in vacua, which is not going to be of assistance to the court. And accordingly, I would submit that it would be proper if Mr. Pihlela feels it advances his case.
Okay, thank you
to
very much.
Determine on what grounds or is the speculation that's been presented to the court, is it speculation that's properly founded and not been presented in vacua, my lady.
Okay. Thank you.
Therefore, I would say it's within the ambit of Mr. Pihlela to pursue his cross-examination in this manner or in this regard to clear up the speculation.
Okay. Thank you very much.
May it please the court, my lady.
Yes. Thank you. Mr. Pihlela, I'm going to allow you.
Thank you, my lady.
Pursue this and get it to finality. Can we call the witness back? Yes, continue, Mr. Pihlela, if you can just either repeat the question or rephrase it.
Thank you, my lady. Court please. Doctor, the question that I was asking you earlier was, on the one hand, Dr. Chivasa has indicated that, my lady, I see there's a hand, I don't know if it's now or earlier.
Whose hand is that now?
Boss.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Chivasa's records that according to her opinion, and she was the attending medical practitioner. She says the deceased died from natural causes. And the formulation of the cause of death being sepsis due to bed sores. Now, I understood you to say that there is certain information that was not at the disposal of the doctor when she made those conclusions. Is that correct, doctor?
You asked me a question like why there was a discrepancy between my diagnosis and the linkage, making it unnatural, to her diagnosis, making it natural. That's when I said that maybe, perhaps she had information not available to her. So I was answering this question in that context, Your Ladyship.
Yes, now I want to know what the information you speak. Are you saying that you have spoken to Dr. Chibase and collegially about this matter, and she indicated that I did not have particular information, or that comes from your own thinking, that maybe it could be that the doctor did not have all the relevant information?
I have not spoken to the said doctor, Your Ladyship.
But you do agree that you had opportunities to do so? No?
I did have opportunities to speak to her if there was contention in the matter. The contention was not presented to me until now, Your Ladyship.
What do you mean by contention?
If doctor? I understood you to say there's a discrepancy between me saying this death is unnatural and the doctor saying it's natural.
Like, isn't it apparent? One says natural, another one says unnatural. Isn't the discrepancy apparent in that regard, doctor?
I tried to explain actually in the document itself, prior to paragraph 7, why my logic, how my logic sent me.
I think there is a hand here.
Yes, my lady. Unfortunately, I have to object again. Mr. Pishlera is now busy arguing with the witness. This matter has been dealt with now for more than 3/4 of an hour, and we're getting nowhere. How is this motor accident so long ago going to assist this court in coming to a finding regarding life Esidimeni caused deaths? This is what this court is about. The court is not examining the motor vehicle accident that happened so long ago. By arguing, keep on arguing with the witness about what he said in his statement, it's not going to bring us anywhere. I know Mr. Pishlera has the right to pursue a matter, but as far as it's relevant, but now it's becoming irrelevant, and he's arguing with the witness, and that doesn't bring us anywhere.
Thank you. Just put your hand down. Can you put your hand down, Mr. Late? Mr. Pishlera?
My lady, I'm not arguing with the witness. I'm affording him an opportunity to respond before I make my own conclusions. That's not an argument. I'm not saying it's wrong.
Mr. Late, is that another hand?
I'm exploring.
Just a second.
I'm exploring.
Mr. Late?
To me.
I see the hand is still up. I just want to. It's still up. Continue.
My lady, all I was doing was exploring the difference between natural and unnatural. Now, the witness says that there's no contention. Now, to me, that defies logic, because if one says something is natural, it is the antithesis of unnatural. And that is what I was putting to the witness. I don't know if that is an argument or a debate, but my understanding of an argument is it's devoid of sense, whereas a debate, people are trying to show each other facts. Okay. But I'm willing to move on from this question. I'll save it for argument later. Okay. I believe I've demonstrated what I wanted to demonstrate. Doctor, there is a situation where I want the correct term for it, so the court will bear with me for a little bit. I think it's common cause in this instance that the deceased underwent debridement surgery. Mm-hmm. Now, what was the significance of this as a contributing factor? Was it considered as one of the contributing factors to his ultimate demise?
The debridement was done to save the patients. The debridement process is done to remove dead infected tissue, which compromises the patient. The surgery was done to help the patient at least improve, because if that tissue, infected tissue, is not removed, the patient's condition will deteriorate much quicker. Your Ladyship.
Thank you.
Yes. Now, what I wanted to find out is, was this a factor? Is it one of the factors that you considered that maybe the surgery was not successful?
I have to review my notes if to comment if the surgery was successful or unsuccessful. With the information I had and then looking at what I saw at autopsy, I came to the conclusion that surgery was one of the things that needed to be done to save the patient. How the degree of how it, if it was successful or unsuccessful, we can ask the surgeons to try and help the court with that matter, Your Ladyship.
Okay.
Now, when a person has, maybe let me ask you this. Let me put it this way. Are there types of people who have a propensity to develop bed sores?
A classical example is somebody involved in a motor vehicle accident. After that accident, become immobilized or confined to a wheelchair. This change of his evolution has increased his risk of developing bed sores because he is not able to mobilize like you and myself without being compromised by the new situation in life. So if you've been involved in a motor vehicle accident, suffered some spinal injury, you are at increased risk of developing bed sores. So this describes a patient who is immobilized, bedridden, that does increase your propensity to develop bed sores. Your Ladyship.
Mm-hmm.
And where a person develops maybe bed sores or historically has had the problem of developing bed sores, does that not weaken the skin around the areas where the bed sores have developed? Like if I have bed sores now on my back, am I then likely to get further bed sores in future?
In layman's terms, the bed sores you've used describe what is actually a pressure-induced injury to your skin. So it means you don't get a bed sore before something like immobilization. So you need to be immobilized in a certain position for that area of your skin to be compromised. Therefore, later on, you will develop a bed sore. So logically, if that thing that compromised you to develop the initial bed sores is not taken away, you will develop, you have an increased chance of develop other bed sores in the future, Your Ladyship.
Okay.
Okay. From what I can gather, do you think it's significant, doctor, that the deceased was taken to Kalafong Hospital to receive treatment on the 9th of October 2016, but then was not admitted? Do you think it's significant?
I'm not sure the evolution before that date because this is a snapshot of a date which I have to try and see the context, like what happened prior to the decision to move the patient to Kalafong. Your Ladyship, I'm just forgot how things evolved until that point.
Okay, let's go to maybe document on page 4587. I think it will maybe cast some light on this aspect.
4587.
Yes. Oh, sorry, my lady. Oh, yeah, no. So I think, yes. Let's see here.
Is it the correct page?
If you can just scroll down a bit, because it seems like somehow I've misplaced that particular document. Yes. This is the document. Malere, I'm just gonna, if the court will bear with me, I'm just gonna access this document because I printed it, but I seem not to be able to find it on my documents. But I'm almost there now. Yes. Now, doctor, this document seems to suggest that on this particular date, the 18th, on the 9th of October 2016, the deceased was taken for treatment at Kalafong Hospital. But somehow, despite having been treated for bed sores, there was no need for him to be admitted. And now what I want to understand is, given the space of time that elapsed between the first appearance of the bed sores, because if you are talking of the 9th of October, and then the deceased 9 days later is admitted for surgery. My lady, there's a hand by Advocate Pinar.
Mr. Pinar?
May it please the court, my lady, may Mr. Plislela just be permitted to identify the document properly so that we know exactly.
You know, I thought he was going to identify the document, but he keeps, that's why it just slipped my mind. Mr. Pitlela,
May it please
I kept on asking you whether this is the document. And this document, I don't even know whether it will assist the witness, because it looks like this is an affidavit. If you can just introduce the document also to the witness.
Yes, this, my lady, is an affidavit.
Did you read the document, Doctor?
No, I didn't read the document, Your Ladyship. Maybe I can start reading if it can be pushed up.
Yes, just start reading the document. Just read it first before he introduces it to you.
Okay, we can scroll down. Thank you. We can scroll to the third paragraph. Thank you. Thank you. The next paragraph. Thank you. I don't know if there's additional.
No, for now, That's.
Let him finish. It's just only 2-3 lines.
Thank you, Your Ladyship. I've read the complete document.
Yes, you may proceed, Mr. Pichel.
Thank you, my lady. This is an affidavit of one of the care workers at Tsepong. It references an incident that happened on the 10th, if I'm correct on the date. The 9th of October 2016, where Mr. Degar was taken to Kalafong Hospital for treatment of bed sores. And now this is 9 days before he was admitted to surgery. So on the 10th, when he was taken, he was treated and sent back to Tsepong. Now, do you think this is significant in the sense that had he received treatment on the 9th, or the surgery had it been conducted on the 9th of October, it might have gone a long way to mitigating the effects of the sepsis in the system?
Your Ladyship, I do not know what are the current treating standards or protocols of bed sores in hospitals. I think a surgeon is the most preferred person to answer this exact question.
Yes, but with a reference to that disclaimer that is contained in your, tell me in terms of what you know, to the extent that, isn't it your disclaimer says, to the extent that there's been further developments, I will defer to clinicians. But in as far as, if nothing has changed, then I believe that my opinion is valid and I stand by it. So please apply the same reasoning now and give me an answer to this question.
I'm applying the same reasoning I expressed in paragraph 11 of my opinion, that I am not well versed in current management standards. So a patient with bed sores, I do know needs debridement. When, in terms of when they book the patient for surgery, what medication they give him or her, and how follow-up works, I do not know, as described in my opinion piece, that this is the current granular management. So I don't know what they do in Kalafong with patients with bed sores currently. Your Ladyship.
We are talking 2016, doctor. Anyway, let's move on from that one. So with regard to the issue of treatment and the surgery, I take it that a person is referred to surgery when there is a certain degree of urgency regarding the treatment that needs to be administered.
This is not necessary. So, Your Ladyship, a surgery is a big department with many functions that they serve at the hospitals that they are in. Not all cases that go to surgery are urgent cases. So surgeons have multiple conditions they look after. Not all of them are urgent. Surgeons will tell you what is urgent for them, Your Ladyship.
I'm talking about Mr. Degar. Maybe I should have limited the scope there. Because I assume that because we are discussing Mr. Degar, then it means you'll take it within that context.
In the context of Mr. Degar, the surgeons will be able to answer what is urgent in the form of a bed sore patient for them. This is their treating standards. They know how they deal with these patients, Your Ladyship.
Mr. Pichela? Mr. Pichela?
My lady? Yes, my lady.
Okay, I think you were like frozen. Continue.
Oh, no, apologies, my lady.
Yes, you're still having the same problem. Yes, continue.
Yes. I'm going to refer you to page 4786.
Do I have this document, Your Ladyship? Oh,
I don't think so.
I can see the document, Your Ladyship, on the screen.
Okay. All
I
right.
am reading now.
This is a statement by Ms.
Let him read it first.
Okay,
Thank you.
madam.
Can you move to the second paragraph? Can we move to the next paragraph? Thank you. Thank you. Can you move to the next section? Thank you. Can you move to this next section? Thank you. Can you move to the next section, please?
I think it's done. I don't know. It is only, is it 4 paragraphs?
Thank you. I see. Okay, there's a next section.
Yes, Mr. Pitlela?
Scott, please, my lady. Now, doctor, are you becoming aware of this statement for the first time?
I'm not sure, but the history, this specific one, I am not sure if it was part of the documents that was given to me. I recollect a history of this kind, which could be extracted from the information I had as part of the documents of this patient. So I'm not sure if it was exact statement or it was information extracted from other parts of the document itself, Your Ladyship.
Okay. Now, with reference to what is stated by you in paragraph 11 of your statement, of your opinion on page 4808, I will put to you that according to this statement and according to the records that are available, Mr. Degger had been receiving ongoing treatment for bed sores. And as per the statements that I've put to you earlier, the first statement being the one that was displayed, I think it's page 4587. That statement indicates that treatment was being administered at a hospital on an ongoing basis. Now, further to that, you've also been able to record that it is stated that when the patient was received for the first time, there was already evidence of bed sores on his body. And this you acknowledge in paragraph 8 of your statement, of your opinion. Lady, there's an objection by
Mr. van Bergen?
Thank you, my lady. My learned friend, Mr. Pishlela, stated that in this statement, and I assume he refers to the statement on or starting Mrs. Morales' statement,
Yes.
that there was evidence of bed sores on arrival of the patient. If my learned friend can just indicate where in the statement that is said.
Mr. Pitlela?
My lady, I apologize. Perhaps I'm moving too fast because I'm already out of that statement. That's why I was now referring the witness to paragraph 8 of his own statement on page 4808.
But
I was moving too fast, my lady. I wasn't speaking only to this statement. I was basically summarizing in terms of all the documents that I've been referring this witness to in closure.
Yes,
So,
but put the correct version to the witness, please.
I do apologize for that, my lady. I just simply took it lightly that everybody would follow. I do apologize for that, my lady. Now, with regard to the statement by Ms. Morale, the statement that was shown to you, she states that the deceased Mr. Decker was receiving medical attention on different dates. The last date being the 6/10, or is it the 9/10, where he was taken to Kalafong. But instead of being admitted there, they sent them away and said, no, this man is fine.
But
you understand me?
You are still referring to Miss Morale. All what
Yes,
Mr.
I wanted to close off on that statement, the relevance of that statement to, then I'm going to summarize everything and put it to the witness.
Yes, but the concern that Mr. Van Bergen was raising, you are still repeating it because he wanted to know where in this statement does Miss Morales say the patient was receiving treatment for bed sores. Did I capture you the right way, Mr. Van Bergen?
My lady, it was simpler than that. The statement that was made by Mr. Pishlela was that the patient had bed sores, is that Mrs. Molly had bed sores. And
before
I asked him where in her statement does that...
had bed sores before being admitted.
Before being admitted.
Yes,
or on admission, she had bed sores.
On admission, when he was admitted.
Yes. Yes, my lady.
Mr. Pitlela?
My lady, page 551 contains the statement of Mrs. Morale.
Page?
551.
551.
Yes.
Does it state all what you are putting to the witness?
No, some of what I'm stating to the witness is what my instructions are.
Yes, but it must be specific to the witness so that we shouldn't confuse him.
I apologize, my lady.
Yes, just please put the relevant facts and the correct facts to the witness.
I apologize, my lady. Now, doctor, I'm gonna put to you a summary of what was the situation with regard to Mr. Franz Decker. And I would like to hear your comment on that. Now, with regard to me saying the patient had bed sores, my lady, I'm quoting paragraph 8 and paragraph 9 of the opinion of Dr. Makoba, and that is on page 4808. In paragraph 8, Dr. Makoba summarizes that
Page?
Page 4808. Dr. Makoba states on paragraph 8 that the documents further reveal that the dissident was managed for bed sores as early as February 2016. Now, I suppose whoever wants to establish what those documents are and where they can be found will have the opportunity to explore that. I'm satisfied with regard to this aspect of the case. So I moved on to paragraph 9 of the same document, 4808, page 4808, where it says that, and this is what is written by Dr. Makoba. Dissident was transferred from Life Esidimeni to Tsepong Health Center on the 12th of May 2016. Upon receiving the dissident, professional nurse Butsi Karina Mrale, who is also CEO of Tsepong Health Center, commented that Mr. Franz Decker was looking weak and had sores on the body. Now, this accords with what is stated in page 551 of my client's statement, Ms. Morale, paragraph 13, where he deals with Franz Decker, the deceased, the late Mr. Franz Decker. So this essentially accords with what is stated in that statement. I'm not bringing anything new, not trying to mislead this witness, Manedi. So all that I was putting to this witness was with reference to what he states in paragraph 11.
Continue to do so.
Yes, because I am on the opinion that, Doctor, your assessment in this regard or your conclusions, having reviewed these documents, it's a bit unfair and it's subjective. Because it seems like you did not take into account all the surrounding circumstances that the NGOs were presented with. You seem to have operated or premised your opinions on your understanding of what is ideal or what an ideal situation would be in certain circumstances, and without having any knowledge of the functioning of the NGOs within the context of the Marathon project and the problems encountered by the NGOs in that project. What do you have to say to that, Doctor?
The comments are made on the documents in the form of an opinion, were informed by the information given to me from requested documents from the police, certified statements. With that information at my disposal, I made the comments I've made, not looking at an ideal scenario, looking at the information that presented a story to me, which felt from extracting the information from the docket that needs further exploring to see if all was going well in this center, which was the patient was in. So your ladyship, the information, the opinion was based solely on the information that I was given, and then not idealizing any scenario on what the patient experienced, and then that's an opinion that I based my opinion on, your ladyship.
Thank you, Doctor. My lady, that concludes my question in respect of the witness.
Okay, so you are done with your cross-examination?
Indeed, my lady, I believe I've covered all the 5.
Thank you. Mr. Profi, are you ready then?
My lady, I am ready. My lady, before I begin, my only ask is that I'm going to do my best to finish by 4 o'clock. But if I don't, may I have the indulgence to just go over 4 o'clock so that we conclude this witness today?
It depends on the type of questions that you are asking. Mr. Van Bergen?
Thank you, my lady. I may perhaps just place on record that by virtue of cross-examination by Mr. Pishlela, I will also have questions for this witness.
Obviously, on that point relating to the fact that he had birth source.
There are additional points as well, my lady.
I'm just saying this is also what prompted you, yes.
Amongst
all right.
it. Thank you.
I don't know whether your colleagues will be prepared to stay longer and whether the doctor, I don't know. Let's just proceed and hear what the others say. Let's just proceed. We'll deal with it at the, but I just hope Mr. Profi won't be that long. Okay?
I'll do my best, my lady. Good afternoon, Doctor. I am Ebenezer Profi. I appear on behalf of a representative of the NGO, Troubleshooting. In respect of my cross-examination, just for the court, it is threefold. It relates to clarity in respect of your post-mortem examination, the NGO's version leading up to this, to the deceased. The NGO's version leading up to the admission of the deceased to Kalafong Hospital, and as that relates to your report, then the hospital records as it relates to the deceased passing away at Kalafong Hospital in conjunction with your report. The majority of my aspects have been canvassed by my colleagues. So when I ask you questions, it's merely seeking clarity in respect of deceased 50, being Timothy Nxumalo specifically. So the questions would then advance from what my colleagues had put to you, but in respect of Mr. Nxumalo only.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I can continue.
Yes, but you must also, he has got unless if the questions can come from different documents. I'm just reminding you that he only has the opinions and the reports that he has compiled. Okay, continue.
I am going to refer to other documentation. I'll do my best to share the screen as they become relevant.
This is only one deceased. I hope you are not going to prolong us for long, okay? I just hope you're not going to prolong us. All right, continue.
Doctor, the post-mortem examination has been admitted as Exhibit N10 in respect of Timothy Nxumalo. As I stated, he's deceased 50 in this inquiry. Did you have all the required information in compiling that post-mortem report?
Can he first get the post-mortem? Can you assist us, Ms. Marriott?
My lady, it's DR 1915 of 2016.
Page
4248.
Thank you. I have the postmortem report in front of me. So the postmortem report is a document of fact. So I didn't need additional document to describe the report, the postmortem report itself. It's just a documentation of what was found at autopsy.
So the additional information that you've been giving testimony relates to the opinions that you had given?
Yes, Your Ladyship.
So is there a specific reason why there is no opinion in respect of this deceased?
I don't remember if it was requested or not. Some of the opinions I gave were requested. I don't remember by who, Your Ladyship. I'll have to go through my records.
So you didn't receive a request to do an opinion in respect of Mr. Nxumalo?
I don't remember, Your Ladyship. I'll have to look at my records.
Then just on a brief aspect, you had testified that in respect of your academic background as it relates to pathology, you testified that you wrote your final exam in 2015 and then you were thereafter duly admitted to specialize in the field of pathology. You'd agree with me that when you did this autopsy in December 2016, you were practicing as a pathologist for just over a year.
So I've been practicing pathology since 2010 because you do autopsies since 2010. So the final examination, it's written in a practical examination to test your knowledge so that you can be admitted into the college as a specialist forensic pathologist. So I've been practicing forensic pathology since 2010. So not 1 year. Since 2010, I've been doing the forensic autopsies.
So would I be correct to say is practicing from 2010, but specializing from 2015?
The college recognized me as a forensic pathologist in 2015.
Thank you. So Mr. Ngumalo died on the 5th of December 2016. So 2 weeks had passed from his date of death to the body being presented to you. Is there any consequence or impact on the body being refrigerated for those 2 weeks?
There are consequences to storing a body for a prolonged period of time. Many things can happen in the process of refrigerating, depending on things like temperature fluctuations, what's the descendant is. So yes, your ladyship, long-term refrigeration periods has consequences on the body.
So would it be possible that one of these many things that could happen is that the presentation of the wounds you described in your report, could they have changed in those 2 weeks?
That fact was considered, your ladyship. That's why histological slides were taken of the patient to look under the microscope, your ladyship. So if I look at when the body is looked at, we call it macroscopically, or visually looking at the body, and then you are not sure of something, you can take sections of tissue, so small pieces of what you're not sure of, and then look under the microscope. So that fact was considered. That's why I took tissue, and then I looked under the microscope to confirm what I was seeing, your ladyship.
Okay. And what is it that you wanted to confirm in those slides?
If there was cellulitis, and then there was infection in the lungs.
Great. Now, in paragraph 4.5, being page 4249, in respect of signs of disease, I just want to remind you that when you were giving your testimony, my colleague, Ms. Marriott, had asked you to read this paragraph, but then you were interrupted because we had to go back to another deceased in respect of the third opinion. And for the sake of the record, we never finished this point. So can we complete the point of paragraph 4.5? You were busy reading it and were going to give us a layman term of what those diseases were. To complete the record and the question that Ms. Mary.
Why did you leave us? You should have just stopped us if you needed something. Okay, continue. But you don't leave a point up to this point, Mr. Profi.
My lady, because the previous deceased point had to continue, so I didn't want to continue on mine and leaving two gaps open.
Continue then.
Paragraph 4.5 reads as follows: signs of disease, bullet point number 1, cellulitis of the right forearm. Bullet point number 2, sunken orbits. Bullet point number 3, subcutaneous tissue and muscle wasting. Bullet point number 3, pallor of mucosal surfaces. These 4 points described signs, not diseases, except for the first one, which include a disease, which is cellulitis. So the first paragraph is says cellulitis of the right forearm. This means inflammation of the skin and subcutaneous tissue of the right forearm. The second point describes a sign. What visually was seen at autopsy is that the orbits around the eye were sunken. Point number 3, the subcutaneous tissue and muscle wasting describe exactly that observation, that the muscles and subcutaneous tissue for this patient appeared that they were wasted. And then paragraph number 3, pallor of mucosal surfaces, describe exactly that the mucosal surfaces on visual observation were pale.
So the only disease there is number 1, cellulitis. The rest are your observations of the body.
Of the signs. It's description of the signs on the body.
Okay. Then, in respect of your findings, you stated that the deceased also showed signs of chronic illness as evidenced by wasting of the body. How did you make that deduction?
By signs of wasting and chronic disease, I associated the pallor of mucosal surfaces, subcutaneous tissue loss, muscle wasting as features which are seen in patients who suffer from chronic illness in any variety of ways.
Is it possible for you to tell the court what that chronic illness was?
In this particular case, deduction could include the cellulitis itself because it is a roaring infection which can be systemic. So it can result in a patient being systemically ill. And then other conditions noted on the body.
What went wrong, Mr. Makhuba?
I'm looking at the report in totality,
Okay.
Your
All right,
Ladyship.
that's fine. Okay.
So the other chronic condition that can be noted is the burn wound itself becoming infected in the form of cellulitis.
Then, just for clarity, what is acute bronchopneumonia?
Acute bronchopneumonia described in layman's terms a fresh now infection of the lungs by some form of a bacteria. It could be a number of bacteria, but the group is bacteria, and then infecting the lungs in the early fresh state.
You had testified previously that persons who suffer from chronic illnesses is prone to infections such as pneumonia. Is that relevant to this deceased as well?
It is relevant. To compound this patient is that so the cellulitis, unfortunately for him, can also result in bronchopneumonia.
Thank you. That answers my second question, that the cellulitis you described as a roaring infection would have then also had an impact on the pneumonia. Am I correct in my understanding that acute chronic cellulitis is then the reoccurring of the cellulitis in line with you referring to it as a roaring infection? It would continuously recur.
You are correct. The term describes that there is an infection which was there. It was not cleared. And then on top of that, an infection happened on the same side. So there was an infection which was there. It just didn't get cleared completely. And then a new infection on the same place developed. That's what the term means.
I do want to explore that point further, but I just want to get clarity on these terms as well. Then we can get back to that point. Then what is a septic superficial wound?
So septic means infected, superficial means superficial, wound, a wound. So septic superficial wound means a wound which is infected superficially.
And then is there a difference? Because in your report you refer to a septic superficial wound, and then at times you refer to just a septic wound. Is there a difference between the two?
The visual difference is visual. So if the wound was only noted superficial, it will be noted on the report that it was superficial. If the depth of the wound was not properly disseminated, I will just describe it as a wound in those areas described as wound.
So on this point, can we then go to the diagram? I just want to get the correct page, just for clarity in respect of which wounds one would see and which ones you would not see. See page 4253.
I'm looking at the diagram. The diagram doesn't describe wounds that cannot be seen. I said the wound that the depth cannot be discerned. So how deep the wound goes, that wound will be described as wound. the wound where visually I could see the wound is superficial, I'll specifically say it is superficial. The other wounds where wound was described is that the depth of the wound, how deep it goes into the body, is where I didn't venture into trying to figure the depth of the wound itself, Your Ladyship.
Thank you.
So the wounds under the right nipple, the hip, and the buttocks, would you be in a position to see with your naked eye, you would see those wounds?
As demonstrated on the sketch diagram at autopsy, it means exactly when I saw the wound, it was superficial, it looked like it's a band wound, and then it was septic. Yes, Your Ladyship.
It is my instruction from the senior nurse of the NGO that she only saw these burn wounds when reading your post-mortem report, that when bathing and taking the deceased to the hospital, there was never mention of any burn wounds. Do you have a comment to that?
My comment would be that what is documented is what was seen at autopsy. Prior to that, I'm not sure what happened, Your Ladyship.
So can swelling and blistering of cellulitis look like a burn wound?
Yeah, it can, Your Ladyship.
Come again?
It can.
Okay.
Yeah.
So further, the NGO says that the deceased's cellulitis would come and go. For example, a week prior to his admission to Kalafong Hospital, the cellulitis appeared on his left arm, but it had healed, and that on the 29th of November, the cellulitis appeared on his right hand and left leg, and because it was more swollen and blistered than usual, the size of the swelling concerned the staff, and that is why they admitted him, they referred him to the clinic or referred them to the hospital. Do you have a comment to that?
I don't have a comment. Is there something specific you want me to comment on, Your Ladyship?
That scenario is probable because of the acute chronic cellulitis, that it comes and goes, and it would be on one part of his body 1 week and on another the next week, differing in severity.
Cellulitis literally means inflammation of the skin and subcutaneous tissue. So something must cause that inflammation. So if the patient is receiving treatment, that inflammation will go away. So it will be cleared or treated. If it doesn't go away, it means the treatment or something else is going on. That's why in hospital, people will do tests, do cultures to find out what is going on, Your Ladyship.
So there's a test that the hospital could have done that it could have evaluated why the cellulitis is constantly occurring.
Even at postmortem, there are tests we can do to try and figure out the cultures of what organisms are causing the cellulitis. But my clinical friends have a much broader array of tests than we do, unfortunately, at autopsy, because you understand at autopsy tissue breaks down. So that's why tests done in live patients have a wider scope of tests to do and a wider information to extract, Your Ladyship.
I just want to be sure that you could have done it, but you didn't, because it's better to do it when the person is alive.
I did the test at autopsy to confirm that this is cellulitis. It was not to try and confirm what organism caused the cellulitis.
Thank you for that clarity. Can we then turn to page?
Now, has your question been answered, Mr. Prophet?
Yes, my lady, the question was answered.
Okay, continue.
Can we turn to page? Well, you can't turn there, so I'm going to do my best to share my screen. Doctor, will you just indicate when my screen is
I can see the document on my screen.
I just want to rotate it.
Yes, just turn it properly.
Now, This is from the clinical records of the NGO before what led up to the admission.
The page number, you didn't refer us to the page?
The page is 4326, my lady. It is the entries from the 29th of November 2016 to the 5th of December when the patient had died. So I'm just going to, if I may, read it out because there are some words that are difficult to see. So on the 29th of November 2016, the patient's hand was getting worse. He was fed medication, then sitting up in the chair, then elevated his hand with some pillow. On the 30th of November 2016, the hand is still swollen. I told the sister, she came and checked it, and she decided that that he has to be taken to the clinic the next day. The 1st of December, the patient was not well. He had blisters on his right hand and his left leg was swollen. We took him to Lodium Clinic, and at Lodium, they transferred us to the Kalafong Hospital. We waited for an ambulance from 12 till 1400 hours. The doctors at the hospital took x-rays for his right arm and his left leg. He was then admitted at Kalafong Hospital at 1 a.m. in Ward 12. The 5th of December 2016. On the 5th of December, we got a call from the manager that Mr. Nxumalo had passed on. So I just wanted to give you the background as to, in respect of the right hand and left leg cellulitis, how he ended up at the hospital. Did you see these x-rays in respect of the right arm and left leg?
I don't remember these specifics. If the patient, when he was admitted to our mortuary, the hospital record included, or it was present or included x-rays. So I don't know. I cannot recall seeing the x-rays. I'll have to review the notes from that day, Your Ladyship.
Okay.
In your description of the injuries and in the diagram we referred to, there's no indication in respect of the left leg. Is that an oversight on your part?
It will mean at autopsy, when the autopsy was done, there was no injury or wound present during autopsy.
So it's possible that while he was refrigerated, the cellulitis in his left leg would have gone away?
No, cellulitis would not go away. So whatever the clinicians thought they saw at autopsy, it means it was not seen.
Okay. Now, just again for the background of the state of this deceased, we now move to the hospital stay. But before I move there, I just require your comment. Because of the bronchitis, I just need clarity on, and because the lungs became an issue here, can you comment that if the deceased, when he was hospitalized, or the period that he was in hospital, is it possible that he would be breathing independently or assisted?
Your Ladyship, at autopsy, bronchopneumonia was diagnosed, not bronchitis. With bronchopneumonia, it is possible to show signs of difficulty breathing or fever. However, our clinical friends can expand on what features they would look for in a patient with bronchopneumonia.
Okay. Then, my lady, can we please turn to page 4346? This is an affidavit from the nurse that was assigned to Mr. Nxumalo on the day of his decease, the day that he died. I don't know if the screen is still sharing or not.
It is, yes.
It is. Doctor, would you like to read it or should I read it out to you?
I'll read.
You'll just indicate when I should page down.
We can move to paragraph 3. Can we move to thank you.
For the sake of the record, the takeaways are... Sorry, Doctor, are you saying something?
I've perused the document. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chef.
For the sake of the record, my takeaways from here is that when the nurse took over Mr. Nxumalo, she recorded that the general condition of the patient was stable but ill. The patient was bedridden and nursed in court bed to prevent him from falling. Could those burnt wounds have occurred from a fall?
By definition, a burnt wound cannot occur from a fall.
Then the patient was breathing well from room air, so he wasn't being assisted in terms of breathing. His general hygiene was well maintained. They did a physical assessment and it confirms with the NGO that his right hand had blisters and his left foot was injured. Then the paragraph 3 is where I want us to focus on, is that on the same day at 11 o'clock, she went to check on the patient, doing her to do care rounds, medical reports. She realized that Mr. Nxumalo was not breathing. She then tried to get a doctor. She couldn't get a doctor because of the speed dial that was supplied were incorrect. The doctor then arrived and certified Mr. Nxumalo dead. Now, I want to just put this in perspective in terms of time with the clinical report of the hospital. So this was the affidavit. Now we turn to page 4277.
Page 4277.
This is part of the clinical records of Kalafang Hospital, the progress report. Is in line with the affidavit, being on the 5th of December 2016 at 11 o'clock. The patient stopped breathing, then struggled to find the doctor. The concern was that the concern for the patient, he had more than 4 days in the ward, not seen by a doctor. They called them with different speed dials, but no available until 12:35, when the patient was certified dead by Dr. Bashlela in the ward. No family was present by then. Mr. Safiso was notified telephonically, his cell phone number, and that he promised to come tomorrow. The takeaways from there is I just wanted to get confirmation of the time, that when she noticed the patient had stopped breathing, it was 11 o'clock, struggled to find a doctor until 12:35. So you had testified so with this background, you had testified that in respect of the consolidation of the lungs, the air spaces in the lungs were filled with something other than air. Do you know what that something other than air was?
In this particular case, it was neutrophils. I can read the histology report because it described what was in the airways. You can give me a second to read. In the lungs, the air spaces were filled with neutrophil rich, so it was filled with cells in the alveoli. and then there was some edema, so it's fluid. So the S spaces were filled with neutrophils, and then basically fluid in the lungs, Your Ladyship.
So, Doctor, could you fill the gaps for us in that? Is it possible that 11 o'clock, when Mr. Nxumalo stopped breathing, that his air spaces were then being filled with these cells and fluid?
The cells and fluid represent an ongoing infection. So for the time period before 11 and 12:30, the period is short for only those things. It told me that was present before 11 o'clock. So the cells that were in the lungs were there prior to 11 o'clock.
So we don't have a reason as to what caused Mr. Nxumalo to stop breathing at 11 o'clock.
He stopped breathing because he probably, that was a moment where he was dead, but then I don't know who confirmed that. I don't know if this note shows the nurse tried to confirm signs of life at 11 o'clock. The statement I have in front of me just says the patient stopped breathing. I don't have context what they mean by this. Did they look for signs of life to confirm if the patient is alive or not alive, Your Worship, Your Ladyship?
So, can I get your comment that if the doctor was found in time, would this consolidation of lungs that was not attended to, could that have been prevented?
Your Ladyship, my comment from the pathology side is that it will take more than a day to clear an infection in the lungs like that. So even if the doctor was found on time and prevented the patient from dying at that moment, the patient will need antibiotics to clear the infection.
So just on the point that a day, that if they had a day, the nurses, she states that he hadn't been seen by a doctor for 4 days. So if he was seen by a doctor a day before to administer, did you say antibiotics?
Yes, Your Ladyship.
It could have cleared the infection and preventing the consolidation of the lungs.
That one I cannot venture because I have too little data. The clinicians who are looking after the patient will have to review their own notes to see at what point the patient starts to change the condition. Where I'm sitting, I cannot make a comment on that, Your Ladyship.
You cannot comment and defer to the clinicians who were with the patient when he died.
Your question, if I understood you, tell me if the antibiotics, if they were given prior, could have cleared in that time space of basically 1 hour, 35 minutes. And my answer was that at 11, with the information you've presented me, I cannot confirm if the patient was not even already dead at 11 o'clock, because in this given information, there's nowhere that shows that the patient was alive at 11 o'clock.
No, I agree with you, and I accept that. And so we leave this point at, we defer to the clinicians who were with the
patient.
Yeah. Because you can't speak on that aspect. So that is precisely my next point, if I may just be given a second. So on that point, I want to then turn to the deceased notice of death, which is at page 4262. It is the notice of death, which is also part of the clinical records from Kalafong Hospital. Just to confirm that it is indeed in respect of Timothy Nxumalo, as his name and surnames reflect, at 69 and 70 at Kalafong Hospital. But I want to take you to the beginning of I want to start at page 4258, which is where it begins. The notice of death begins at page 4258, my lady.
Yes, I've noted that.
Which reflects Timothy Mwalo. And then the page that I wish to take the court to is the previous page. But I seek your comment in respect of the notice of death, and you would note here. Apologies, my lady. There is an aspect that I need to just, if I may just have a second. I've confirmed that it is Timothy. If we can just go up, I need to get to sick page 2460. Yes. Now, in respect of the notice of death on page 2460, the portion B of the notice, you had advised that we should defer to the clinicians who saw the deceased when he had passed away. So this was the notice of death was completed by Sharol with the practice number 5602653, the day after the Mr. Mwalo had passed on. And I just need to zoom this. I just want to, for the benefit of the witness and the court, that 22.2 reads, I, the undersigned, hereby certify that the deceased named in section A, which is the section I started on, the particulars of Mr. Mwalo, to the best of my knowledge and belief, died solely and exclusively due to natural causes. Do you agree with the medical practitioner that the deceased died solely and exclusively due to natural causes?
I do not agree with the clinician that the patient died exclusively due to natural causes.
The difficulty I have with that is then when do we defer to you and when do we defer to the clinicians at the hospital? If the hospital, you had said we should defer to the clinician at the hospital, and they state that it's natural causes.
This particular matter is dealt with in the Inquest Act. We do encourage clinicians to write to the best of their ability what they think. But there is a mechanism that there's a mechanism if one, the family is not happy, or the suspicion around the death, for a review of the case to be done. Fortunately, later, usually more information become available. Therefore, the design of the system is to that when that mechanism in the form of an inquest is done, things that might have been overlooked or misinterpreted can be reinterpreted because of clarity later on. So this doctor is not unique in this matter. There are many death notification forms which are completed out there, and then clinicians improperly classify patients as have died of natural causes when they have not. Your ladyship.
So we then leave it to the court to decide which one to believe, because the court would have the benefit of additional information.
Yes, our part is just to review as well and give our opinion from our perspective, and then the court will decide.
Okay. Then I just need to find paragraph 77. I'm not going to belabor this point because paragraph 77, cause of death, immediate cause, cardiac arrest. You had testified yesterday that this is merely but the mechanism because the lungs and the heart stop working before you die. So it's not the primary reason for you. It's not the primary reason for your death. Something would have caused your death, and then the cardiac arrest is the latter portion that follows. Am I correct?
You are correct. Cardiac arrest or respiratory arrest literally is the end, is the common most terminal part of almost all conditions, many conditions. So it fails to describe what actually caused the patient to go into cardiac or respiratory arrest or neurological arrest. This document you are showing is captured by Home Affairs for statistical reasons. It helps with trying to distribute resources. So we have noted in the past, data has shown that these documents are improperly filled by clinicians, and there are documents out there from WHO, from the National Health, to help guide clinicians to complete this document correctly. Your Ladyship.
How do we know that this document is one that's been completed correctly or incorrectly by the clinician?
A lot of documents we never know, but documents of patients that are referred to forensic pathology services, we get a second chance to review these documents, and then we note where there's discrepancies. But if those cases don't come to us, data has shown that we never know. A lot of documents are in fact incorrectly filled, and another component is that when they are filled, we call it like the chronology or the cause effect of this staircasing of conditions, sometimes improperly done, Your Ladyship.
Okay, thank you.
So my last point on this, my lady, is purely for clarity, is am I correct that, is my thinking correct that if a clinician says natural causes, the immediate cause would then be cardiac arrest because there was no primary situation that took place to facilitate the death because the death was natural. So in natural causes, it wouldn't be strange to see cardiac arrest to be the immediate cause.
It will be strange, Your Ladyship, because cardiac arrest is not a medical cause of death. The cardiac arrest resulted from something. So something needs to happen. Either you have sudden cardiac death, which there are many causes of it, and then you go into cardiac arrest.
That something would still be natural.
It will depend what that thing was. Then we'll decide if it's natural or unnatural.
Okay. So, in light of the conclusion I then make is that I will argue that the court should believe the clinician who saw the deceased the following day versus the pathologist after 2 weeks of refrigeration, and many things could have happened to the body, that the clinician's conclusion is more probable or to be believed than your conclusion. Do you have a comment to that?
If I may, yes, if I may, Your Ladyship. Even the clinician here, in her or her description, has cascaded what she thought the sequence of events were, that the patient had vascular dementia, then that made the patient have epilepsy, then the patient suffered burns. So if you die of burns, in the legislation, it is described as an unnatural death. So that's due to external stimulus, due to chemicals, burns, physical, is classified in the Inquest Act as unnatural. So the doctor here has described an unnatural death. It's unfortunate that she ticked natural in the other page. But in the document you're showing me now, this person described person who died of unnatural condition, who died in unnatural death.
And those burns could be the cellulitis, because you had testified that cellulitis could present as burn wounds.
No, the burns were complicated by cellulitis. If I had to rewrite this thing, I'll push everything down, remove the cardiac arrest, and write cellulitis there. Because in her cascading, I don't have, I can't fault the person. It makes sense. Patient had vascular dementia, probably had epilepsy during the epileptic episode, suffered burns, which is an unnatural condition. If you die from that, it's classified as an unnatural death. The burns, unfortunately, complicated by sepsis. So the immediate cause of death was the cellulitis plus the bronchopneumonia that followed that infection.
And this is what the witness explained previously. Yeah.
So
I'm just going to. Are you done with this point that you wanted to?
I'm done with this point, my lady.
Moving to a next point.
Yes.
Can we just? I don't know. I just need a break, 5 minutes, just to stretch our legs. And then while we check also with Mr. Profi how far he will go, and perhaps we should also check the evidence leaders in the meantime can try to check with the witness availability, because there will be other people who will be asking questions. We don't know how far they will go. Let's take this 5-minute break just to stretch our legs, and we resume just now. This is 3:32. We will resume at 3:40.
As a copy.
The witness is one. Thank you very much.
Lady,
Yes.
it's difficult to arrange this doctor for Monday as well because we have several other expert witnesses aligned and they have had to change their schedules and to see patients. So if I may request that we finalize his evidence today, I couldn't get hold of the doctor in any event during the break. There was no one available.
Is that
at the
possible? I
reception.
can check with the others. Will that be possible? Because we don't know what questions they will ask. I don't know what Mr. Profi has indicated that he has got a number of questions. I don't know what Mr. Van Bergen, how long his questions will be. Let me hear Mr. Van Bergen. That's fine.
Thank you, my lady. If I may be of assistance to the court and to my learned friend, Ms. Marriott, and also Mr. Late, a large number of the questions that I wish to debate with Dr. Makoba do not actually pertain to life Esidimeni, so I'm not going to proceed with those. There are two aspects, my lady. The one deals with the issue raised by Mr. Pichlela yesterday in cross-examination, whether a failure to have provided sufficient medical information, medicines and so forth could have had an impact. My lady, my submission would be that is fact dependent. One will have to look at each individual case to see if it had an effect or not. And I don't know whether this witness can really assist in that regard. So if your lady is satisfied that I reserve that issue on the basis that it is fact dependent and has to be debated with the factual witnesses, then I need not cross-examine him on that. And then the issue of his reference to sores, it's once again, he relies on secondary information, affidavit.
The issue of bed sores, okay?
Yes, and that is something that I can clarify with the deponents to the actual affidavits, who will be able to give
okay, but
answers.
In
So,
that case,
so my lady, if on that basis, I need not cross-examine.
you are prepared to reserve his cross-examination to a later stage?
If it becomes necessary, my lady.
Okay, but then we are still left with who else now? Is it it was yourself, Peterson? I don't know whether Peterson has indicated that he was not going to have questions.
May I please
correct?
report, my lady? Yes, you are correct, my lady.
Okay, thank you. Who was the other one who reserved his cross-examination? Was it Mr. Pinar? If I may check with Mr. Pinar.
May it please the court, my lady. At this stage, I don't foresee any questions to this witness.
Okay, thank you. Can we then find out if Mr. Profi, how much time are you going to need so that we should your friends, your learned friends should know, your colleagues should know?
There'll be no need, my lady. I have 2 more questions and I'm done.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Can we then proceed along those lines?
I don't see the witness, so I'm not sure if the witness...
There is the witness.
Doctor, the end of the road is almost here. Apologies for keeping you on a Friday. There was debate yesterday surrounding whether you are capable of giving a comment in respect of negligence. That debate was settled, that you are, given your speciality. I'm not going to repeat the evidence in respect of the hospital, but with reference to what the nurse had said, that for 4 consecutive days, the deceased did not see a doctor, and that when she noticed something was wrong, that he stopped breathing at 11, she could only find a doctor at 11:35 due to speed dialing concerns. Are you in a position to comment in respect of negligence of the conduct that I had just put to you?
I'm not in a position, Your Worship, Your Ladyship. The people on the ground can answer this question much, much greater than I can do.
That you cannot comment that a patient is not being seen by a doctor for 4 days, whether that's negligent or not?
this is where I'm coming from. I don't know how they manage their roll call, so how they do their ward round and how they are pushing doctors to which ward or how the setup is. The people who designed how they manage their patient on the ground on a day-to-day basis will be the clinicians themselves who can answer. I can give an example which is not related to what we're doing here. There are versions where doctors will have a treatment plan and then will give that treatment plan to be followed every day by the nursing team on the ground, and then to report if there are any problems, and then they will attend to that. So it is plausible that a doctor might not be seen for 4 days, and then in that unique situation, it might be normal for them. So that's why I wouldn't be able to tell in this specific situation that their arrangement of work on the ground was abnormal or not abnormal. If this was in a normal hospital, like in Kalafong, Mamelodi Hospital, it would be highly irregular. But still, I would like the clinicians to explain.
So I just need clarity that if this was a normal hospital like Kalafong, it was Kalafong Hospital. So I don't understand that.
So then I will appoint or direct the court to ask the clinicians in Kalafong, ask the people in Kalafong if this is normal for them.
Mary, then the second question then no longer finds any relevance. And I submit that my last comment is then that we leave the differentiating conclusions to the court because the court has the background. And on that basis, I then have no further questions for the witness.
Thank you very much. Mr. van Bergen, would you then use this opportunity?
My lady, no. I'll reserve the cross-examination and only make use of it if it really becomes necessary, which I suspect will not be the case. I said I will reserve my cross-examination and only request the doctor to be recalled if it were to become really necessary, which I suspect will not be the case.
Okay.
Thank
you. Did all of you who wanted to cross-examine the doctor have an opportunity? Did I touch everybody? Has everybody been included? On that note, can I excuse the witness, Ms. Marriott and Mr. Late?
Thank you, my lady. I submit so.
Okay. Thank you, doctor. Thank you for availing yourself. Thank you very much. You are therefore excused.
Thank you, Your Ladyship.
Mr. Late?
Thank you, my lady. If I may, I would just like to present to the court the schedule of witnesses for next week. And I would also want to comment that some of our colleagues put us in difficult situations regarding the unavailability as pertaining some witnesses. And I would really request them to, as far as possible, put themselves to the availability of this court and not to arrange dates with witnesses without connecting or contacting me first. So for next week, it will be Sandra de Villiers.
Just a second. Witness number 13.
That's correct, my lady. I wanted to call Dr. Lombard after Sandra de Villiers because he is the physician who saw the deceased shortly before his death. But Ms. Forster already arranged with him for Tuesday. So we scheduled...
So he has been arranged for Tuesday, Dr. Lombard.
Dr. Marule and Dr. Lombard are both scheduled for Tuesday.
Dr. Murule, it's number, okay, 17. Yes.
I'm going to call Dr. Murule first because he already waited the whole day here on Monday to testify. And then
Okay.
on Wednesday, it's going to be Stella Mofokeng. That's witness number 12, my lady. And on Thursday, the witness that was in the wind was apparently found by the investigating officer, Mashlatsi Nofile.
That is number?
He is witness.
Oh, number 19.
That's
Nofile.
Nofile.
That is for Thursday.
For Thursday, yes, my lady. And then Prof. Tintinger requested us that he testify on Friday. So we have.
Who's that?
Prof.
Professor.
Tintinger. Yes,
The professor, number 20.
that's correct, my lady. Those are the witnesses for till the 4th of February, of March, my lady.
Thank you very much. That will therefore conclude our proceedings for today. Mr. Van Bergen?
My lady, just perhaps one issue. If the learned evidence leaders could perhaps provide us with a copy of Professor Abel Pinar's curriculum vitae at an early stage before he testifies, I'll appreciate it.
Okay. Mr. Evidence leaders, you have noted the point. Is it possible to do that, Mr. Pina, Mr. Late?
We currently don't have one, but he's not a medical doctor. He's his speciality is in nursing, psychiatric nursing. But
Or is it psychiatric nurse? Okay.
We'll find the curriculum vitae as soon as possible.
Thank you, my lady.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That concludes our proceedings for today. The proceedings will adjourn on Monday. What is the date for Monday?
28th.
Thank you. The 28th of February 2022. Thank you.
As the court pleases.
As your ladyship pleases.
As
As the court pleases.
the court pleases, my lady.
Your ladyship pleases.